Semeton, can't hear you.
Apparently, if I'm trying to share my screen from here, my computer audio goes off. I don't know what's wrong. So what I'm going to do is, wow, that's not what I can do. I'm going to try sharing again. Hopefully it doesn't go off this time around. Okay, good. All right, so it should be okay now. All right, is it okay like this? Hello, is it okay like this?
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. Okay, so I'll be discussing using the MVC architecture for web development. So to not waste our time, I will just go straight to the content. We look at the overview of the MVC architecture, look at the components that make up the MVC architecture, we look at formula of popular frameworks, employ the MVC architecture in web development, and some of the advantages of MVC architecture. So let's go. So what is the MVC architecture? So MVC is actually an acronym for model, view, and controller. And it is a software architectural design pattern that is commonly used in developing web applications. And the way it works is that the MVC pattern helps us to divide the program logic into three different parts, but three interconnected parts. So these three parts are unique on their own. There are different aspects. They handle different aspects of uh, of the application, and then they also are connected. So that is important too. And the way they work is that we want the application we are building now, we want to split them into two aspects, and then we want each of these components, the model, the view, and the controller, to handle unique aspects, and then they all interact in the end. And this architecture has improved over time. Okay, so there have been some historical development to it. However, it is one of the first approaches that it was used to describe and implement software construct in terms of their responsibility, like I mentioned earlier. So we have different aspects, the model, the view, and the controller, and all of these have different responsibility with regards to any web application that we are building. And so what are the components? So the components are the acronym, as I mentioned before. We have the view, we have the model first, which stands for the M, we have the view, and we have the controller. So we'll be zooming in into them in detail, and then we look at them at a glance. So what is the model? So the model aspect of the MVC architecture actually handles everything that deal with the data and the database. So the model is a representation of the data of any web application, basically. So you for any application, for instance, we want to collect user data, we want to store this user data, we want to like query them, as the case may be, and manipulate them. So the model is basically is the one that we and that will be a representation of this database, of the database regarding the application. Whereas the view we serve as the interface that the user is going to be interacting with. I mean, the user is not going to interact with the logic of the application or the database in itself. The aspect that is going to interact with is the view. So for instance, when you visit a website, what you have is, let's say, the contact forms, the login page, the sign up page, all of those things. So those are the view, and you input data there. So it's actually a place where a user can basically interact with the application, and that's what the view is all about. And in the case of the MVC application, which I'm still going to mention some few minutes from now, we can have multiple views, which is one of the advantages too, and they all help the user interact with the application from the user side. And then we have the controller. So the controller serves as an interface between both the view and the model now. So the controller, for short, I can describe it as being the brain of the application. So let's just take an instance, for instance. So you visit the website, and what you have in the website is that you have you put in your username and you put in your password, then you press enter. So what it's supposed to do is that your application is supposed to verify if you are the one and if your password and your username are correct, and then you can be logged in. So what actually help transfer that data and actually do the whole logic, it's actually the controller. So the controller is what serves as the interface between what you are doing as the user and what is in the database that is represented by the model, as I mentioned earlier. So let's look at everything at a glance. So this is what we have. We have this model, this architecture. You have the view, you have the model, you have the controller. All right, this is where it works. So the user interacts with the view, like I mentioned, and then the view alerts the controller of a particular event, or what the user have done now. And based on that event that is there, the controller then updates the database that is represented by the model. So it updates the model maybe by adding some new data that has been entered, or let's say the user wants to like delete some information in the case of a crude application and wants to update or delete some information. So once the user has like try to initiate that event, the controller gets that and then updates the model accordingly. And sometimes the user can actually using the view can interact with the model directly, and then the model is updated based on whatever the user has actually done. And the interesting thing about the MVC framework or architecture is that, of course, we can write our code anywhere we want to write it, right? The point is that the code is going to work. We're going to query it wherever we want to write. But the MVC architecture, it's actually divided all these things into various parts, and then you can actually know where to go to if there is an issue with the application. For instance, so let's say you enter data. Typically, the logic is meant to be written in the controller, right? The logic, all right, and then the model is supposed to be like the representation of whatever thing that is in the database, maybe the name and the maybe it is required or not, the length, all of those things. So that's what the model is going to do, right? So suppose somebody enters the data and then it's not being stored in the database. You can know where to go to. Of course, the view is not necessarily the case is not necessarily the problem in this case, because the view is just the UI, it's just the representation of what you have. So what is happening is that, oh, the data that has been entered is not being passed into the model, right? It's not being passed into the database. And then we can just go directly to the controller to see what is wrong there, and then we can try to correct that. And that's one of the interesting thing about this MVC architecture that is employed in web app development. So I'm just going to mention some of the benefits briefly. So it actually helps us to organize large size web application. So we don't have to have 1,000 line of code in just one file. So we can have it in the 3 sections, and the model, the view, and the controller, and then we can just represent the database in the model and leave that there. We can do our view, the OUI, and our form, our login page, all of those things, what is going to be presented to the user in our view, and then we can write the logic to connect the view to the model in our controller, and that works basically. So that way large applications can be built quite easily. So one other thing is that it helps with faster development process. So it is actually quick, and most times most of the framework that implement or employ this actually makes it quite easy to develop, and then you can easily modify it. I think I mentioned this before, so it's easily modifiable because we have each aspect of this architecture responsible for various things. So you just know where to go to, and then you can easily modify. You don't have to scroll down thousands of lines of code before you probably see where to modify and all. So we can also have multiple views, like I mentioned before. So the MVC framework allows us to have multiple views that are used, that the application needs essentially. And also another thing is that it's SEO friendly, that is search engine optimization friendly, and then it is easy to maintain and easy to plan as also, just because of what I said. So the one overarching thing about this framework is that you have web application being developed in various sections or various aspects of the framework, which is the model, the view, and the controller. And what this model, view, and controller is that they represent various aspects of the application. So they are responsible for various things. So that way we know how to, it is easy for us to maintain it, to plan it, and basically do that. So let's look at it at an overview once more. The conclusion, the framework that uses the MVC architecture. So we actually have a lot of frameworks actually employ this because it's actually neat to create an easy to create web application with the MVC architecture. All right, so we have Django, Python. So Python, Django is a Python web framework, and then it employs the MVC architecture in web development. G2 is a PHP framework that also have the model, view, and controller as part of as an architectural design for software development. And Angular, JavaScript framework, and then Laravel, another PHP framework. So and many other. So majorly it's more of an industry standard way of developing web application right now because of it it can make us scale projects, like it's scalable. You can extend a project using that because you can have as many table represented in many table represented in the application. You can have as many models this time around. You can have multiple controllers. You can have multiple views, so you can have a load of sub applications within the major application. So yeah, for big applications. So in conclusion, so MVC, like I said before, is short for model, view, and controller, MV and C, and it is a methodology or architectural design pattern that is used to create web applications. So it is used to separate an application into three main components, which are the view, the model, which represents the data of the database of the application, the view, which interacts with the user, or which the user interacts with, basically, and then the controller, which serves as the interface between the model and the view. And that's where the logic of the applications take place. So thank you very much for listening. This will be the end of my presentation. I don't know if we have any questions. Hello, can we all still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please, if you have any question, you can go ahead and ask Semeton. And if no one has any questions, Semeton, you can evaluate the audience. Please.
All right. So do we have questions before I evaluate for my audience? Okay, so I'll be supposing that we don't have any question. Okay, so I will be asking some of my questions. The MVC framework helps us to divide web application into three aspects or three components. So I'm just going to call someone at random. Convenant, so can you tell us these three aspects of the MVC architecture?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So sorry, I'm sure I missed that part because I was a bit late for the section.
I didn't get that.
I'm sure I missed that part. I was a bit late for this section. Sorry.
Oh, all right. But then even in the conclusion, I think I mentioned that. So I'm going to call someone else. I can't even see a lot of people here. Okay, Victor Ajibodu, if I'm correct.
Sorry, what was the question again?
All right, I said that the MVC episodes is an architectural design pattern that helps us to divide web application into three interconnected aspects. So what are those three aspects?
Are you talking about the what's it called? Oh. Sorry.
Hello, Semeton, you can take somebody from maybe mobile app.
Sorry, sir?
Or you can ask someone that's a developer, like someone from mobile app. Then you explain more, please.
All right. So, okay, possible. I'm not so possible before.
I expected that. I knew that was the next name you're going to call.
Okay. All right. So, can you answer the question, please?
Your question was what again?
So the question is that MVC is the design pattern that helps us divide web application into 3 but interconnected parts. So what are those 3 parts?
It is the model, the controller, and the view.
All right, thank you. So the MVC is just short for those 3 aspects: the model, the view, and the controller. So I'm going to ask a second question. In this model, view, and the controller, which of these aspects is a representation of the data of the application or the database? So Matt, can Matmandi help us with that?
Sorry, what was your question?
The question is that which of model, view, and controller represent the data or the database?
Model.
All right, thank you, sir. So the model does that. All right, somebody else answered, not you. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I think the final question I'm just going to ask Eboluwa is that can you mention like just 2 benefits of the MVC architecture in terms of web development? Web development.
Hi, sorry, I don't think I know it. I came late for the meeting.
Oh boy. Right. So I'm going to ask someone else. Taiwo.
Okay. What is your question, sir?
So 2 benefits of the MVC architectural design, however.
The benefit.
Oh, so we're not listening. Okay, so can okay, Mr. Zansa, can you help us? So can Mr.
Hello?
Zansa.
Yes.
Yeah, can you help us? So 2 benefits of the MVC framework.
Yes, it's speed development, and it helps to code in a more structured way.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So it's help us speed development and then help us build it in a more structured way. All right, so thank you, everyone.